The moment the hatchling Virelix realized Kael'ren was gone, a low, trembling whine filled the observation chamber. It was not loud, but it carried a strange weight, a vibration that seemed to hum through the walls. The hatchling's small, scaled body shivered, its eyes wide and unblinking, staring at the doorway where the human had disappeared. Scientists and guards looked at each other nervously. They had done what the council ordered. The human, Kael'ren, had to be removed. But none of them expected this. Virelix, a creature bred to survive isolation, refused food, refused heat, and even the soft glow of the chamber lights seemed to bother it. Kael'ren had always been quiet. Not a soldier, not a researcher, just a technician who cleaned floors and maintained equipment. But somehow, he had formed a connection with Virelix that no one else understood. When he was there, the hatchling would curl into itself and rest. When he left, it became restless, its tiny wings twitching as if it could sense danger even where none existed. The guards tried to distract it with toys, holographic projections, even simulated sounds from its natural habitat, but nothing worked. It paced, it hissed softly, and every time someone approached, it backed away, snapping its small claws in warning. The scientists were baffled. They had all the data, Virelix's vitals, its growth rate, its nutritional intake. According to every chart, it should have been healthy. But the readings told another story. Its heart rate spiked unpredictably, and its body temperature dropped in cycles. Dr. Lasara, the lead xenobiologist, frowned as she reviewed the data. "It's not sick," she said almost to herself. "It's reacting to something else." One of the younger researchers, Tolan, whispered, "Could it be missing Kael'ren?" The word sounded ridiculous at first. How could a human, one small, ordinary human, have such an effect on a dragon? Yet the numbers told the same story. Every time Kael'ren had been near the hatchling in the past, its vital signs stabilized. Every time he left, they became erratic. Tolan stared at the monitors, unsure whether to laugh at the absurdity or panic. The council had been firm. Dragons must not depend on humans. Emotional attachments were considered dangerous, a weakness that could endanger both species. Kael'ren had been removed in accordance with strict orders. But as Virelix whimpered and paced the chamber, the decision began to look less like a policy and more like a mistake. Meanwhile, Kael'ren sat outside the holding chamber, confined to a small room that smelled faintly of metal and sterilized air. He pressed his palm against the glass, staring at the hatchling. Even separated by reinforced panels, he felt the subtle tug of the creature's presence, like a string connecting them. He had not expected this level of attachment, not from a dragon so young. But as he watched Virelix shrink into a corner, curling its tiny wings around its body, he felt a surge of determination. He remembered the first time they had met. Virelix had been suspicious, frightened, and every scale on its body bristled with tension. But Kael'ren had stayed. He had whispered simple words, offered his hand without moving too fast, and simply waited. Hours had passed, and finally, the hatchling had inched closer, its head tilting in curiosity. When it had finally rested against him, Kael'ren had known they shared something rare, something neither science nor protocol could explain. Back in the observation chamber, Virelix began to pace faster. Its small claws clicked against the floor as its tail lashed back and forth. The scientists tried feeding it nutrient gels, but it spat them out. Heat lamps were adjusted, the air was humidified, but nothing soothed it. The little dragon's eyes glimmered with unshed tears, or at least, that is how Tolan described them. Some of the more experienced scientists shook their heads. "Dragons don't cry," Dr. Lasara said. "They survive. They adapt. But this is different." The hatchling's restlessness started to affect the chamber itself. Tiny energy fluctuations hummed through the floor panels, small sparks jumping where no wires should have been active. Monitors showed unusual readings. Virelix's neural patterns pulsed unpredictably, like a storm confined in a small body. The council observers, who had been watching from the control room, frowned. One of them muttered, "It's not just stress. Something about that human, it stabilizes the hatchling." Despite strict rules, Kael'ren could not stop thinking about Virelix. He paced his room, rubbing his hands over the railing, trying to understand why a hatchling could respond so strongly to him. It was not a question of fear or dominance. The dragon did not recognize him as a threat. He realized it was trust, something the council had underestimated completely. The hatchling trusted him, and without that trust it could not rest. Hours passed, then a full cycle of the station's artificial day and night. Virelix grew weaker. Its whines became soft, almost inaudible, yet the monitors screamed with irregular readings. Dr. Lasara's voice trembled slightly as she reported the data to the council. If we do not reverse this separation, the hatchling could enter a critical state. It's not dying of disease. It's losing its will to survive. The council remained firm. Rules were rules. Bonds with humans were forbidden. Yet, a quiet unease settled among the guards and scientists. They had seen many dragon hatchlings, but none had responded like this. It was as if Virelix knew exactly who Kael'ren was and refused to live without him. Late in the artificial night, the hatchling finally stopped moving. It pressed itself against the cold floor, eyes half closed, shivering. It made no sound. Monitors displayed erratic, almost dangerous readings. The scientists whispered. Tolan, unable to resist, said the truth aloud. It's sleeping, but only because it's pretending Kael'ren will come back. Kael'ren, hearing this from the control room, felt a pang in his chest. He knew the council could not understand. No one could. But he also knew he could not let the hatchling suffer. Somewhere deep inside, he realized the bond was stronger than policy, stronger than science. It was simple and small, yet more powerful than anything the galaxy had ever seen. And so, the night stretched on, Virelix curled and shivering, waiting. Kael'ren sat outside the reinforced glass, silent, knowing that until he returned to that chamber, neither he nor the hatchling would find peace. Kael'ren sat in his small room, staring at the blank walls, but his mind was with Virelix. He could almost feel the hatchling's tiny body shivering through the reinforced glass. He remembered every detail of their first days together. How it had looked at him with suspicion, how it had hissed when anyone else tried to approach, and how it had finally lowered its head to touch his hand. It was a moment he would never forget. He realized then that nothing he had ever done in the station mattered as much as simply being present for Virelix. The scientists tried to explain the hatchling's strange behavior logically. Dr. Lasara said that dragons could form bonds, but no bond should have caused this much distress. It's unusual, yes, but manageable, she told the council, her voice steady though her hands shook. She tried feeding it again, adjusting the heat, adding soft sounds of the hatchling's natural environment. Nothing worked. Virelix simply lay curled in the corner, occasionally twitching its small wings, its eyes flickering toward the door as if expecting Kael'ren to appear. The guards were less patient. They believed the hatchling was acting out, refusing to follow orders, testing their patience. It's just a young dragon, one said. It'll get over it. But even they could not ignore the strange energy pulses coming from the chamber. Monitors recorded fluctuations in the hatchling's neural patterns that no one could explain. Tolan, the young researcher, leaned over one of the screens and whispered, "It's reacting to him. Only him." Kael'ren could not stop thinking about it. He had spent hours cleaning decks, repairing panels, and performing tasks the scientists considered unimportant. Yet those small acts had mattered more to Virelix than anything else. He had never tried to dominate or control the hatchling. He had simply been patient, observing its movements, letting it grow used to his presence and never forcing it to do anything. And the hatchling had responded in kind. It had trusted him, and in that trust, it had learned to sleep, to rest, to feel safe. He remembered one quiet evening when the hatchling had been restless. He had sat near the chamber, silent, and simply hummed a small tune he had learned as a child. Virelix had approached slowly, its tiny claws clicking against the floor, and finally curled at his feet. The hatchling's breathing had slowed, its eyes closed, and it had slept peacefully for the first time in days. That moment had been simple, but it had shown Kael'ren the power of patience and calm. Even now, separated by the reinforced glass, he felt the connection. Virelix's small body trembled, waiting for him. The realization hit him hard. He was the only one who could calm it. The council's rules did not account for trust. They did not account for the emotional bond that could stabilize a life, even a dragon's. Kael'ren clenched his fists. He could not let the hatchling suffer because of policies that made no sense. Back in the observation chamber, the scientists continued their attempts. Heat lamps were adjusted, air flows changed, and soft holographic images of dragons flying were projected. Virelix, however, ignored everything. Its eyes remained focused on the doorway, its small wings twitching in silent frustration. Dr. Lasara frowned at the monitor. "It's waiting for him," she admitted quietly. Tolan leaned closer, shocked. "Waiting? But he's not even here." Dr. Lasara nodded. "That's exactly the problem. Virelix has learned to associate calm, safety, and sleep with one human. Without him, nothing works." She glanced at the council observers, but their faces were stone. They had no understanding of the simple bond that had formed. They only saw protocols and rules, nothing more. Kael'ren, meanwhile, paced in his small room. He considered the consequences of disobeying orders, of stepping into the chamber without permission. But the thought of Virelic's suffering was stronger than fear. The hatchling had never shown fear of him, never attacked or hissed in his presence. Instead, it had learned to trust him in a way no one else could. That trust, he realized, was life itself for the creature. He thought back to the small gestures that had mattered most. How he had offered water in a shallow bowl instead of forcing it into the hatchling. How he had let Virelix explore his hands and fingers at its own pace. How he had laughed softly when the hatchling made awkward little movements and rolled onto its side. Those small moments, simple and human, had built a bridge between species, a connection stronger than any protocol or command. Tolan watched the monitors and whispered to Dr. Lasara, maybe the human's presence isn't just comfort. Maybe it's essential. Dr. Lasara did not respond immediately. She did not want to challenge the council openly, but in her heart, she knew the truth. Kael'ren's quiet patience, his ability to simply exist near the hatchling without demanding anything, was the only thing keeping Virelix alive in spirit. Virelix twitched, lifted its head slightly, and let out a soft, almost inaudible sigh. The monitors registered tiny fluctuations in its energy patterns. Dr. Lasara leaned closer, her voice soft. It's hoping, it's waiting for him. Tolan's eyes widened. But the council, they'll never allow it. They think humans are dangerous. Kael'ren clenched his fists, determination rising inside him. He knew what he had to do. Rules or not, orders or not, the hatchling depended on him. The thought of leaving it alone, shivering and restless, was unbearable. The connection between them was simple, quiet, but stronger than any barrier, stronger than any command. It was life, trust, and hope all rolled into one small creature curling in the corner of the chamber. That night, as the artificial lights dimmed, Virelix finally lowered its head slightly, pressing its snout to the floor. It did not sleep fully, but it closed its eyes long enough to show that it recognized Kael'ren's presence, even through the reinforced walls. And Kael'ren, sitting outside the glass, whispered softly to himself, I'll come back. I promise. I won't let you suffer. The simple bond that had begun with small gestures, quiet patience, and trust had now become something far greater. Virelix would wait. And Kael'ren knew he had to return. The hatchling's survival, its very calm, depended entirely on him. And in that knowledge, a quiet courage began to grow. The human who had calmed the storm would soon have to face the challenge of bringing peace to a restless dragon and defying rules that did not understand the power of a simple, patient connection. The council chamber was vast and cold, filled with the low hum of energy fields that kept the station running. Dragons of every size and scale gathered there, their eyes sharp and unblinking. Irinder Val, the eldest and most respected among them, spoke in a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. This bond is unnatural. No dragon should depend on a human for calm or for sleep. It is a flaw, not a gift. The other council members nodded, their expressions stern. To them, rules were absolute. Trust between species was dangerous. Dragons were meant to be independent, untouchable, and free from emotional weakness. Yet, reports continued to arrive from the observation chamber. The hatchling Virelix refused food and rest. Its energy pulses were unstable. Every system in the chamber showed irregularities that no science could fully explain. Savrix Thorn, a young dragon historian, listened quietly. Unlike the others, he did not immediately dismiss the bond. He had spent years studying the ancient records, forgotten histories of dragons and other species. In the dusty holographic archives, he had read accounts of dragons who had once depended on other intelligent beings, not as slaves or tools but as partners. These bonds had saved entire generations during times of great disaster. No one on the council remembered these stories, or perhaps they had chosen to forget. Yet here, in the modern era, the council was blind to the truth. The hatchling's distress is temporary, one council member said, a sharp, silver-scaled dragon named Viren. It will adapt. It will survive without the human. But Savrix felt a chill. He had seen enough history to know the consequences of ignoring bonds. Bonds were not weakness, they were life. He tried to speak, but his voice faltered under the weight of centuries of tradition. Meanwhile, in the observation chamber, Virelix writhed in frustration. It stomped its small claws against the floor, whining softly, a sound that twisted the hearts of everyone present. Scientists tried once more to coax it with holographic projections of other dragons, moving and flying, calling as they would in the wild. The hatchling ignored everything, its eyes fixed on the doorway where Kael'ren had disappeared. The absence of the human seemed to create a vacuum inside it, a missing piece no technology or protocol could replace. Dr. Lasara and Tolan continued to argue quietly among themselves. The council will never understand, Dr. Lasara said, her voice soft but firm. They see only rules. They cannot see what is happening right in front of them. Tolan nodded. It's not just comfort, he whispered. Virelix depends on him. Without Kael'ren it can't survive properly. The council, however, remained unmoved. Irinder's eyes swept across the chamber, settling on Savrix. And you, historian, he said. Why do you hesitate? Speak clearly. Do you support this bond? Savrix swallowed. I only speak what I have learned. Long ago, dragons formed partnerships with other beings. They were not slaves. They were allies. And those bonds saved us when technology and strength alone could not. This bond, between the hatchling and the human, may be more important than you realize. A ripple of disbelief passed through the chamber. Ancient myths do not matter now, Irinder snapped. We survive through strength and independence, not attachment. This human is a risk. The hatchling must be weaned from this dependence. Back in the observation chamber, the hatchling's small body quivered. Its wings trembled, its tail lashed against the floor, and every movement seemed to send sparks of energy through the chamber. The sensors picked up fluctuations no one could explain. Virelix's small head lifted toward the door, and for a brief moment, its eyes seemed to glow with a silent plea, a call for Kael'ren to return. The council remained stubborn, insisting that the human's removal was necessary. They did not understand that the hatchling's rest, its growth, and even the stability of the chamber itself depended on Kael'ren's presence. Savrix watched silently, his concern growing. History had taught him that ignoring these connections could lead to disaster. Bonds were not weakness. They were survival. And he feared that the council's ignorance would soon prove it. At night, the observation chamber grew quiet except for the soft whimpers of Virelix. Dr. Lasara checked the monitors again. It's worse, she murmured. Its energy is unstable. We may not survive another day without the human. Savrix could not sleep. He moved through the council corridors, ancient knowledge guiding his thoughts. He remembered stories of dragons who had perished because they ignored the beings they trusted. And now, staring at the current crisis, he knew the past was repeating itself. Kael'ren's absence was creating more than stress, it was a threat to the hatchling's life. He approached the council chamber quietly the next morning. You are making a mistake, he said softly, his voice carrying a weight no one could ignore. This hatchling is unique. The bond it has formed is not weakness. It is necessary. Without the human, the hatchling will weaken. The energy flows, the rhythms, they all depend on him. The rules cannot protect us from this. Irinder's eyes narrowed. You defy centuries of law, historian. Why should we listen to you? Because the records show, Savrix replied firmly, that ignoring bonds has caused more losses than any war or disaster. This hatchling's survival is linked to the human. If you do not understand that, you risk everything here. The chamber fell silent. For the first time the council hesitated. Even Viren shifted uncomfortably. But stubborn tradition still held firm. We cannot allow exceptions, Irinder said finally. We will maintain separation. The hatchling must adapt. Back in the observation chamber, Virelix's small body trembled violently. Its wings flared briefly, then drooped. The tiny dragon lay against the floor, eyes closed, refusing food, refusing heat, refusing life itself in small ways. Dr. Lasara watched in despair. If we do not return the human soon, she whispered, it may lose the will to survive. Savrix left the council chamber with heavy steps. He knew what had to be done. Tradition could not save this hatchling. The rules were failing. And the longer Kael'ren remained away, the closer Virelix came to collapse. The mistake was clear, and he feared it might cost more than anyone realized. The bond between the human and the hatchling was stronger than law, stronger than fear, stronger than all the council's authority. And history had already proven that ignoring such bonds was a mistake no dragon could survive. As night fell over the orbital station, the chamber remained dark except for the faint glow of the monitors. Virelix lay small and trembling, waiting for the one human who had the power to calm it. And somewhere in the corridors, Savrix resolved to do whatever he could to return Kael'ren to the hatchling, before the mistake of the council became irreversible. Kael'ren had been pacing in his small room for what felt like endless hours. He could still feel the pull of Virelix's presence, faint but insistent, as if the hatchling's thoughts were reaching out to him. The council's rules weighed heavily on him, but the thought of leaving Virelix suffering was unbearable. He had no weapons, no technology, no formal authority, just patience, trust, and the quiet bond he had built over days and nights. And that was enough. Meanwhile, in the observation chamber, Virelix's small body trembled violently. It lay in a tight curl, refusing food, refusing warmth. Its eyes flicked to the door again and again, hoping, waiting, straining toward a presence that would not appear. Dr. Lasara stood by the monitor, silent, her hand resting on the console. Tolan watched nervously, whispering under his breath, "It's barely holding on. One more day, one more hour." Savrix Thorn had not left the council. He had spent hours arguing in private corridors, pleading for someone to understand the truth. But the council remained unmoved. Irinder Val's words had been firm: separation is necessary. Rules protect us from weakness. Yet Savrix could not shake the knowledge from history. He knew the bond between Kael'ren and Virelix was not a weakness, it was survival. Late in the artificial night, Savrix made his decision. He could not watch the hatchling suffer any longer. Quietly he approached Kael'ren's room. The human looked up, startled. "Savrix? What are you doing here?" "We need to return you," Savrix said simply. "The hatchling cannot survive properly without you. I will help you bypass the council's restrictions. No one else can comment. Only you." Kael'ren hesitated. The rules, the danger, the risk of defying the council, it all pressed against him like heavy air. But the image of Virelix trembling in the corner, refusing food, refusing warmth, refusing life itself, pushed him forward. "Then let's go," he said. His voice was quiet, firm. He would not let fear keep him from saving a life, not even a dragon's. They moved through the corridors carefully, avoiding security patrols. Savrix led the way, his knowledge of the station's hidden paths invaluable. Kael'ren followed, his heart pounding, but a quiet determination burning in his chest. Every step brought him closer to the hatchling, every heartbeat aligned with the rhythm he had long ago taught Virelix. Calm, steady, present. As they reached the observation chamber, the lights were dim and the hatchling lay still, its small body pressed against the floor. Its eyes lifted weakly at the sound of approaching footsteps. When Kael'ren stepped into view, even behind the reinforced glass, something shifted. The tremors in Virelix's body slowed slightly. Its eyes widened, a glimmer of recognition breaking through exhaustion. Savrix opened the chamber quietly, using a small override to bypass the security locks. The hatchling's tiny body stiffened, then froze, its head tilting as it watched Kael'ren approach. The human's voice was soft, carrying no threat, only calm. "I'm here, Virelix. I'm not going anywhere." The moment Kael'ren's hand reached toward the hatchling, Virelix moved instinctively. It crawled toward him, small claws gripping the floor, its wings trembling but folding in submission. When Kael'ren's hand touched its scales, the energy within the hatchling shifted instantly. The tremors stopped. His breathing slowed. For the first time in hours, maybe even days, it closed its eyes and rested, trusting completely. Dr. Lasara and Tolan, standing back, could hardly believe it. The monitors that had been spiking erratically now stabilized. Energy readings flattened. Even the small sparks and fluctuations in the chamber subsided. It was as if the simple presence of one human could calm a storm that no technology could manage. Savrix watched silently, relief washing over him. The council's mistakes were clear now. No rule could override the power of trust, patience, and genuine care. Kael'ren had not needed weapons, training, or authority. He only needed to be present, to breathe, to exist near the hatchling without demanding anything. That was enough to restore balance. Virelix, curled beside Kael'ren, let out a soft, contented sigh. Its wings wrapped loosely around itself, its eyes half closed, and a faint warmth returned to its small body. Kael'ren stroked its scales gently, speaking softly in the quiet chamber. "It's okay, little one. You're safe now." The council members, observing remotely, were stunned. They had seen the data, the energy fluctuations, the failed attempts of scientists and technology. But nothing had prepared them for this. A human, without tools or authority, had restored calm to a creature deemed unmanageable by the highest standards of dragon law. The realization sank slowly, painfully into the council. Strength alone did not define survival. Empathy, presence, and trust could achieve what no rule could enforce. For Kael'ren, the moment was simple yet profound. He did not seek recognition or reward. He only knew that Virelix needed him and he was there. He whispered quietly, "I promised I'd come back. I never left." And the hatchling responded, nuzzling gently, a tiny spark of life and energy flickering along its scales. The night passed with no interruptions. Virelix slept peacefully for the first time since Kael'ren had been removed. The monitors recorded calm, steady patterns. The small chamber, once chaotic with energy surges, was now serene. For Kael'ren, Savrix, and even the distant council observers, it was undeniable. The humans' presence had restored balance. As dawn approached in the station's artificial cycle, Kael'ren remained beside the hatchling. He had learned something simple yet profound. No rule, no law, no council decree could replace trust. No technology, no protocol, no training could calm a creature the way patience and presence could. And in the quiet glow of the chamber, both human and hatchling rested, connected in a bond that no one could ever separate again. Savrix, watching silently from the corner, knew that history was changing. The council's mistake had been corrected, but more importantly, a new understanding was emerging. Dragons did not need humans as masters, nor humans to dominate dragons. They needed them as allies, as companions, as equals. And that bond, simple, quiet, and unassuming, had just saved a life. The moment Virelix slept peacefully beside Kael'ren, a calm energy spread through the observation chamber. The little hatchling's tiny body relaxed, its wings folding neatly against its sides, its tail curling around itself like a soft ribbon. Monitors showed stable readings, and even the minor energy surges that had troubled the station for days faded into quiet normalcy. Kael'ren leaned back on the floor, tired but satisfied, knowing he had done what no one else could. Savrix Thorn watched silently from the corner, a small smile on his face. The council's mistakes had been corrected, but the lesson was far larger than any single event. Trust, patience, and care had triumphed over rules, over authority, over centuries of tradition. The hatchling had not been weak. It had simply needed the right presence to thrive. And Kael'ren had provided that, quietly, without spectacle or claim. News of the incident spread quickly throughout the station. Scientists, security personnel, and even some council members began to whisper. Words like bond and trust replaced discussions of control and authority. The council, though initially reluctant, could no longer deny the evidence. The hatchling's survival depended not on technology, not on protocols, but on the simple presence of a human. Irinder Vol, the eldest council member, finally addressed the gathering. His deep voice resonated through the chamber. "We were wrong," he admitted slowly, almost reluctantly. "Strength alone does not define us. Trust, connection, presence, these two are important. This bond, between human and hatchling, has shown us something we have long forgotten." Other dragons nodded in agreement, though some still struggled to accept the change. Yet even they could not argue with the evidence. Virelix, curled beside Kael'ren, radiated calm and stability in a way that no discipline or regulation could have achieved. The hatchling's eyes fluttered open briefly, acknowledging Kael'ren with a soft nudge of its snout. That small gesture carried more meaning than any speech or decree. Kael'ren, for his part, remained humble. He did not seek recognition or reward. He only wanted to ensure the hatchling was safe. Yet the council offered him honor, positions, and privileges he had never imagined. He declined most, choosing instead to remain with Virelix. "I only need to stay with him," he said quietly. "That is enough." Savrix, observing this, understood something important. The galaxy had always measured power by strength, by fire, by dominance. But now, a new measure was emerging. Humans, in their simplicity, patience, and empathy, could stabilize dragons in ways no weapon, no technology, no battle could. They were not weak allies nor subordinates, they were partners. Companions. Equals. The bond between Kael'ren and Virelix began to inspire other dragons and humans alike. Across the station, dragons began requesting human companions, not as servants, not as subjects, but as equals who could provide calm and understanding. Scientists began studying the connections not to control them but to learn from them. Even the council slowly adjusted, acknowledging that rules alone could not define survival or strength. For Kael'ren and Virelix, life returned to a quiet rhythm. They explored the station together, small paws and claws moving alongside human feet. They shared meals, small games, and quiet moments of observation. Kael'ren spoke softly to the hatchling, humming tunes he had learned long ago, and Virelix responded with gentle nudges and tiny purrs. The bond was simple, unassuming, yet infinitely powerful. Other humans began to interact with dragons in similar ways, guided by Kael'ren's example. Dragons that had been isolated, wary, or aggressive slowly learned to trust. They slept more peacefully, fed more reliably, and exhibited calmer energy patterns. The station became a place where species could coexist, not through fear or dominance, but through mutual understanding and care. Even the council recognized the broader implications. Savrix presented his historical findings, showing that humans and dragons had once formed alliances that saved countless generations. These bonds had been lost, ignored, or dismissed over time. Now they were being rediscovered, not through force, but through the quiet actions of one patient human and one brave hatchling. Across the galaxy the story spread. Tales of Kael'ren and Virelix became a symbol of cooperation, patience, and the unexpected power of trust. Humans were no longer seen merely as fragile beings, nor dragons as solitary rulers. Instead, both species learned that strength could be measured not just in fire or scale, but in empathy, care, and presence. Kael'ren often sat beside Virelix in the observation chamber, the soft hum of the station around them. He watched the hatchling sleep, its tiny chest rising and falling steadily. He whispered quietly, "We've done it, little one. We've shown them something important." Virelix stirred, nuzzling his hand gently as if to say, "Yes. Together we are stronger." And so, life continued, simple yet extraordinary. The bond between human and dragon had changed more than one hatchling's survival. It had shifted the way the galaxy viewed connection, trust, and partnership. Rules were no longer the only path. Strength alone was no longer enough. Patience, care, and empathy had earned respect, forged trust, and created a future where humans and dragons could face the universe together, side by side. Kael'ren smiled as he watched Virelix stretch its small wings, then settle again beside him. The hatchling had slept peacefully for the first time without fear. And for the first time, the dragons understood why humans could never be underestimated. Not for their power, not for their strength, but for their heart. The galaxy had learned a lesson that no law, no council, and no tradition could ever teach. In the quiet glow of the observation chamber, human and hatchling rested together, a living symbol of change. Around them, dragons and humans alike began to see a future shaped not by dominance, but by trust, respect, and the unspoken bond between two very different species. The galaxy had witnessed a small miracle, simple in its form, yet powerful enough to change the course of history forever.